All right, so we're going to ask each of the panelists we kind of prepared them and asked them 3 questions. So we're going to kind of frame the conversation around these questions. So the first one is, what is your experience living in our racialized society? And Sandra, I'll invite you to go first.
I had a chance to listen to the presentation that Michael Emerson did. I'm really glad that he shared my favorite quote of his, or my favorite thought of his, which is that racialization, what it means to live in a racialized society, first you have to understand what racialization is. And racialization is a context in which race matters profoundly. Race matters profoundly for life experiences, opportunities, and relationships. And so when I thought about this question, the first thing that came to mind for me was Viola Davis's speech. So I'm going to read it to you. This is the speech she gave when she won the Emmy, and I'm going to share with you how it hits me personally. In my mind, I see a line, and over that line, I see green fields and lovely flowers and beautiful white women with their arms stretched out to me over that line. But I can't seem to get there, no how. I can't seem to get over that line. That was Harriet Tubman in the 1800s. And let me tell you something. The only thing that separates women of color from anyone else is opportunity. You cannot win an Emmy for roles that are simply not there. And there are 2 things that really profoundly moved me in that speech and that experience as it relates to living in a racialized society. It's not that there have not been incredible Black actresses in the past. It's that the roles were not there. The opportunity needed to be there. And so she spoke to something that I resonated with about opportunity being there. And the second thing she did was she spoke on behalf of an entire group of people. So I started thinking about Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and all these other people who have won the Emmy in the past, or won awards in the past. And if they've gone up there and said, I would like to just thank the academies or the people for opportunities for white males in Hollywood or on television. They don't do that because the opportunity is there. They don't even think to do that. So the fact that she felt that what she was doing was it wasn't about her. It was about what it symbolized and represented for an entire community of people. So living in a racialized society means that I recognize when opportunities are not there. Every time a major conference, you can name the top 10 conferences that we all go to as Christian leaders to learn, to develop ourselves, I always look at the speaking lineup. I always look at who's speaking, who the experts are, what is their race, what is their ethnicity, what is their gender, what is their socioeconomic status, who do they represent, on whose behalf are they speaking. And I'll tell you one thing, I notice that the people that I see on these lineups are not the people that Jesus chose to spend most of his time with. They're not people on the margins. They're not people on the outside. They're not the vulnerable. They're who we see as experts. And it's like I expect things to change year to year, and I go to the website and I check the conferences, and sure enough, it's like, you know what? This is not for me. This conference is not for me because it's not about ministering in my context. It's not about ministering to my community. It doesn't even represent my perspective. So I notice when the opportunities are not there. And when I get opportunities, I share them because I recognize that getting that opportunity is not about me. So obviously, I'm not Viola Davis. I'm not an incredible actress. I am not winning an Emmy. But any time I have an opportunity that's presented to me as a speaker, as a preacher, as a pastor, as an author, I always ask myself, who is not present here? Whose voice is not present here? And what does it look like for me to share my platform and to share the relationships and networks that I have to develop more opportunities for people? That's what it means for me to live in a racialized society. My leadership is not about me. It's about the community I'm connected to.
That's great. I hate that I'm next. In case, what I say next doesn't have as much clarity, I will synthesize my expressions with these 4 words: pride, anger, lament, celebration. pride, anger, lament, celebration. I say that insofar as to paint the trajectory that I feel like I've been on insofar as it concerns the way in which persons of color, minorities, whatever you want to call groups, have been pitted to, as an individual, to represent the whole. And so in a racialized society, in my experience, I've typically been unfairly used or taken advantage of as a mouthpiece for all black men, right? Now, that's not holistic. That hadn't been the case each and every time, but as I think about that question, that's what I think through. And that's something that African Americans celebrate as well. It's not just, that everybody's in on that. And so, my younger years, that was a thing of pride because you were told to go out and get your books and work harder than anyone else because you have to work 3 times as hard as your white male counterpart and all those other things. But for me, it was pride. Oh, okay, so if I go perform, I'm automatically the best. And so part of the danger in that pride is that I'm unfairly promoted because I can articulate speech in a certain way, or I get certain kind of test scores, or I can perform in certain areas. And so now I look like an unusual black man. And so that was pride in that. But you get a little older, the gospel starts to impact your heart, and then you're angry about that. And so when your coworkers and the church staff say, man, how do black guys feel about, what happened in the news? I don't know. I have not talked to all of them. And so that starts certain kinds of responses of anger in my heart. And then, of course, you ask God to come and touch your heart in new ways that you haven't been wise enough to invite him into those spaces in your heart. And so the last several years have been lament. I just lament that happens, and I'm not the only one, and that happens to all of us on some level. And so now I pray that I'm going into a chapter of celebration where we are all of God's children, all with calling and molding and gifting and shaping. And so yes, I continue to lament that in a godly way, but now how do I begin to celebrate the fact that it is what it is, but the word says this, and I can be a champion of that and this already not yet tension until he comes. And so that's preachy, but if you've heard nothing else, pride, anger, lament, and celebration.
In terms of experience of living in a racialized world, for me, I'll start off just by saying that even being on the panel, I was extremely aware of the fact that I wanted to represent Asian Americans well, but I spent 18 years overseas. And so I wanted to say that from the get-go that my experience isn't representative, and a lot of what I will share is from the past 6 years of ministering to Asian Americans and absorbing and hearing their pain of growing up in this country specifically, things that I was spared because I didn't grow up here. I will say that in the past couple years, what I've experienced as I've become more and more conscious as an international student at first, but then quickly thrown into what the America that the international student is never told about, that you discover you have to learn and adapt to, and God calls me to be a citizen here. Like, I was born here, and I thought I wouldn't, I don't know. The idea of being a citizen is a very interesting thing for those of us who are sojourners. But my experience of living in a racialized society as an Asian American is that I have to choose to invest, and I can choose to opt out. And there's a lot of confusion in our community because there's a certain type of Asian American who's presented as the Asian American. You see a lot of East Asians, but when we say Asian American, do we think of the Thai? Do we think of Hmong people? Do we think of the folks who aren't fitting into the model minority? And what does it mean as an Asian American on a panel or in any position of authority to represent Asian America? That in itself is a heavy burden. My experience of racialization in this past year has been becoming a lot more aware of what America struggles with and how that manifests in this generation, and realizing that my family, and I've compared experiences with my white brothers and sisters about their conversations with their families, that my family has had experiences, those who have immigrated here and those who have been in America for a year or for a generation or two, they have experiences of being bullied and of being hit, both from black and white and brown. We're always the perpetual other, and so when I start talking about black or brown issues, they start saying to me, you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know what they did to us. So what do we do in our role stuck between worlds when we're always othered at the same time? So that's just the tip of the iceberg, and I would actually encourage you to find, if there's an Asian American that that's grown up here, to really talk to them about their experience as well.
I'm glad Barnabas kind of raised that, because we recognize in Mosaic that we have people who are not born here. I'm one of them, who's not born here. So my own experience of racialization in America has been my time living in California for 10 years and then now in Chicago. And it's very interesting that you framed it that way, because I am the perpetual other and I represent all of the Caribbean, it seems. And I am representative of, okay, so everyone smokes weed? No. That's not, and so the expectation is that you are always representing your entire group of people. And when I lived in California, interestingly, I was either rejected from my white brothers and sisters because I was too black, or from an African American community because I was too white. And so I was never fitting in. I never could find a space. And so I really, as you said, Barnabas, you really understand the perspective of being a sojourner and being, this is not our home. This is not where we live. We are perpetual aliens, as the scripture tells us. All right, so I want to let's thank our panel. That was deep. All right. All right, so we want to kind of move into just a little bit about their perspective, and some of this was shared, but maybe in more concrete ways. What do you think, or what do you wish that more people knew about living in a racialized society? How can we enlighten our community? What would you say are ways that you would hope people would understand, enter in, ask questions about, or even think about living in a racialized society? What would you tell our community? Sandra, you can go first, or any of the panel members can go first.
I'm going to do it. All right. I really appreciated your comments, Barney, and your perspective, knowing and having walked through some of that with you. And I want to start with that. Michael Emerson showed a slide of a grid, remember, and on the grid was black and white on one side and then Asian and Latino on the other, with the sense of kind of being foreign. And I think that that is a very just distinct and unique experience, being foreign to the U.S., whether, Afro-Caribbean, Latino, whatever the background. So I think that the complexity of the conversation we're having requires and calls us to ask questions to one another versus make assumptions. So let me start with that. As a Latina preacher, pastor, and author, I told you guys that I wanted to create opportunities for more people. Now, I'm nothing like the people that I pastor right now. The congregation that I pastor right now is an urban, primarily Puerto Rican, Mexican, and African American congregation, people that grew up in the hood. I did not grow up in the hood. I grew up 10 minutes that direction in Buffalo Grove. My parents came here from Colombia and Argentina looking for a better experience, the American dream. And it's very evident to my congregation that I do not represent them. In some ways, I'm nothing like them. And I can't be. I'm not going to pretend to be I'm somebody I'm not. But at the same time, I experience that sense of otherness, foreignness, outsiderness, because I may look a certain way, and in actuality, my deep cultural values and perspective are completely different than the people that I'm around most of the time. So that's one of the reasons I think I have such a passion for opening up opportunities, particularly for the leaders in my community, because they are so gifted and they are so creative and they are so fantastic, and they will not have the opportunities I have because of the way they look, speak, where they come from, and their last name. So I feel indebted to the Lord and responsible as a leader to utilize those things well. Now, what do I wish people knew? In the presentation, Michael Emerson also talked about inequality and how whites are 18 to 20 times, have 18 to 20 times more net wealth, more wealth. And I wish people knew, particularly here at Trinity, as you guys are preparing for pastoral ministry, that living in a racialized society matters to your pastoral context. It matters to how you preach. It matters to how you counsel. It matters to how you do pastoral care in your congregation. So I'm really glad you brought up the foreigner and alien because, I studied Ruth just like you guys in Hebrew with Dr. McGarry, Every single page of that notebook I'm using right now as I'm preaching to my congregation. I'm looking at the parsings and I'm looking at the significance. And then I have to turn to a congregation that has a great diversity of educational and socioeconomic backgrounds and ask myself, what does this mean for them? Because this congregation understands what it means to go to a place where people will not accept them, where they experience danger, when they take risks for God. And they know what it's like to be a woman who's in a vulnerable situation because I know the experiences of the lives of the women in our congregation and the people that have come through our transformation ministries. The book of Ruth is not conceptual to them, like this could happen somewhere far away. It's an everyday lived experience. And I studied 1 Peter like you guys did in Greek, and I use my notebooks. And I look at my references, and then I ask the question, what does this mean to a congregation that feels like a perpetual alien in their own society? And what does it look like for me to bring the truth of God's word to bear in their context? Because they're living in a racialized society where being a foreigner and an alien means something, where they don't feel like a citizen. It's not conceptual, it's actual and everyday lived experience. I sat in counseling classes, and I listened to the scenarios, and they were very helpful. But they did not prepare me for the kinds of things that I counsel right now. I'm like in the office, like, what is happening? I've never heard of this before. And then I call my 18 mentors, and I say, please help me. Because they live in a racialized society where race matters profoundly for their experiences, for their opportunities, and their relationships. It matters for death and life and health. And it matters for education. It matters for what they go through as parents. And so the counseling that I do matters because I live in a racialized society.
All right,
and I
Sandra,
wish they would know
just
that.
Get the rest of our panel involved. Great. Thank you. Thank you.
So it's a hard question. I wish my first answer would have been, I wish most people knew that they were living in a racialized society. That's my first answer. But that doesn't work. So I'll say this. I wish more people knew what they could actually do about it. And when I say the word do, I mean actually do something that could actually get done. And I wish people were empowered with application.
What kinds of things would you name?
That's the next question. I think what I want to do is simply say that we live in a culture that's been informed by media and story that now thinks we're in a post-racial society, right? And, we need to celebrate some of that. The last 50 years, we've made cosmic shifts with what got done. I study civil rights movement, so I'm always celebrating these legal regulatory victories, but the heart was still missed, and the spirit of what they were trying to attain is missed. And so I think the next question is going to lead into what the church can say about this, and for me, it's all about relationships. I'll close with this story and move on, but I was at my 20-year high school reunion this past weekend, which means I'm older than what you thought. But I bumped into an older lady, one of my dad's classmates, and we're talking at the hotel. And I was telling her I was there for my 20 year. And she said, you know what, all of us, we never had ours. She's 63 now. We're trying to get ours done. And she's an African-American woman. She's like, all the white classmates, they have theirs every 10 years, but they never include us. So we're gonna do one for ourselves. And my heart broke because I had spent the night partying with my white, black, Asian classmates who we were all with, and we were able to do something that they won't do. And that's because of relationships. We had the kind of environment where we can get to know each other better. I don't know if it's an answer, but to answer it succinctly, I wish people knew that what they themselves, as the regular person on the pew in our churches, could actually do about it. And for me, it's the way of relationships and friendships.
The first thing I'll say is that in terms of what I wish people knew about living in a racialized society is that for the majority of people of color, we can see that white folk are blind to their own privilege and power. And related to that is that, kind of off what you were saying, consciousness sometimes, becoming conscious racially, sometimes I've seen as I've walked with people, seems like a finish line. It's framed like, oh, I'm a white person who gets it now, but it's the beginning of a journey. And I'll say that personally, I'm still a racist trying to become not. Like, it's in me, it's in all of us, and it's the beginning of a journey. And so that's something that I wish people would know. The second thing, you might have a lot of friends on Facebook that post very shrilly about things happening in America. And I wanted to say, I wanted to take a stab at why that might be. The reason that some of us post a lot of different things online, and we post maybe in a fashion that might seem a little bit militaristic, is because we've seen the effects of racialization and we experience that in our families and in our loved ones' lives. So when we speak and when we share, it's because we know that if ignorance moves on, people will still die. And people will still lose their jobs, and people will still be taken advantage of. And so we speak in an act to defend out of love. But it might come across as a little bit angry because we're protecting people that are hurt. And the last thing I'll say about what do I wish people knew, and I'll talk a little bit more specifically for Asian Americans and how Orientalism affects us and kind of middleman worker affects us still. Well, I actually just wanted to show a 20-second clip of how Orientalism and otherness still affects Asian Americans today.